in dealing with an enormous workshop group of 600 people, my colleague and I, Ruth Sanford, told of things we might do with the group. And I suggested at the end that one of the things I would like to do, but probably it was too risky to do, would be to hold a group of blacks and whites meeting together on stage.
The setting was an auditorium.
Setting was an auditorium.
600 people. Was it a mixed race group?
It was a mixed racial group. There were many more whites than blacks, but there was a good solid representation of blacks, because the man who organized it made it known to the black groups who are very low in their economic status, that any black who wanted to attend would be given a free ticket. So it was an unselected black group. It was unselected, self-selected would be a better term. Self-selected black group and also self-selected white group. The audience was very enthusiastic about having such a group, but I knew that blacks who volunteered might be risking their jobs, so we emphasized the fact that no one should volunteer unless they were really ready to. First just 2 blacks volunteered, then 2 more, then there were plenty of whites. So it ended up being a group of 4 blacks, 7 whites, and the 2 of us as facilitators. And again, the first attitudes were decidedly bitter. An older man told of his anger at the fact that when he did work equivalent to that of a white man, he was paid just a fraction of what the white would receive. He also gave a very vivid account of how it felt to be invisible. He wanted to be visible. And he told about going into a butcher shop, and a white person came in at the same time. The white person was waited on. Another white person was waited on, and another, and another. He was invisible until finally a white woman said, this man's been here a long time. I think he should be waited on. And here he was, an educated man, a professional person, and yet undergoing indignities of that kind. On the part of the whites, the primary emotion was fear, and they gradually expressed that quite fully. The fear of what would happen to them if the blacks, who constitute 80% of the population, if the blacks took control, what would happen to the whites. Another attitude of the whites was that this was the first time in their lives they had ever had a chance to talk to blacks as equals. Always the blacks were in subservient positions. One of the blacks, who said very little, said at one point, "This is the first time in my life I've ever said anything to a white person except, 'Yes, boss. Yes, boss.'" In other words, he had never been anything but a subservient person, and here he was speaking as an equal.
How long into the process did it take for this to come out?
The whole thing only lasted an hour and a half, and yet by the end of that time, they were speaking to each other individually and with much more understanding. One of the black women was very vocal in saying that she was glad the whites were afraid, because they'd caused her so much trouble in raising her children with the feeling that they could be proud that they were black. And to show some of the progress that was made, one of the whites expressed attitudes that were quite unpopular with the audience. He said, "The blacks should be more patient. Things are moving, but you've got to be patient." Well, the audience was not in a mood to be patient, and they booed him. And toward the end, Daphne, the black woman, turned to him and said, "I didn't like it when the audience booed you. I don't agree with a word you said, but you have a perfect right to say it, just as I have a perfect right to say what I feel. And I can work with you because I know where you stand." It was that kind of better respect for each other as persons that developed very strongly. And then the other thing that happened was that the time set came to an end. It was supposed to be a tea break, and in South Africa, a tea break is sacrosanct. But nobody would break for tea. They just kept on talking and talking on stage, talking and talking in the audience. it was only the beginning of a dialogue, but it showed that a dialogue could begin and could make progress toward better understanding. And since then, we've had letters saying how much that experience meant to them.